I'd now like to go into the major part of our program and recognize our special guest of honor, Major General Patrick Brady. General Brady was born in South Dakota, grew up in Seattle, and attended Seattle University. He was participating in a compulsory ROTC program, and we'll not ask him questions about this, but was evidently relieved of duty at one time. Realizing that he'd probably have to serve in the military because there was a war going on, he made amends and rejoined the program. Not bad for the second time around. Ultimately being commissioned as second lieutenant in the Medical Service Corps. He served in uniform from 1959 to 1993, various assignments, and after attending flight school in '63, was assigned aviation duties flying medical evacuation aircraft. He served 2 tours in Vietnam, first with the 57th Medical Detachment, the original dust-off unit, commanded by Major Charles Kelly, who worked with his crews and let the name dust-off stick, still with us, instead of just aerial medical evacuation. General Brady was known amongst aviators as an aggressive pilot. I'm not going to touch that. I'm told all pilots are aggressive. That's what they told me anyway. He helped pioneer night flying techniques before we had night vision goggles. He would attempt missions that others refused to fly and pioneered combat dust-off approaches to landing zones for patient evacuation in all weather, combat conditions, and at night. From his book, and he'll have some in the back after we conclude, he said, "We did not like to have someone tell us we couldn't do something we thought was right, or that we knew that we could do." That's a great ethos, do the right thing. Said it got him into a lot of trouble. It didn't seem to hurt him later in his career. Took some time to realize he was not always right, and there were things that he couldn't do and shouldn't do to be a good soldier. But he says, "I did some things that many thought could not be done, and soldiers lived because of that." Thank you. A partial list of his decorations includes the Congressional Medal of Honor, the Distinguished Service Cross, Distinguished Service Medal with 2 bronze oak leaf clusters, Defense Superior Service Medal, Legion of Merit, Distinguished Flying Cross, 6 awards with oak leaf cluster, Bronze Star with V device, Purple Heart, and Air Medal with 52 oak leaf clusters. Even infantryman knows how much flying it took to earn those. Air Medal with V device, various other service ribbons and awards. He is joined today by his son, Casey. Casey, thank you for being here, for supporting your dad in his distinguished service career, and his grandson, Kenny. He and his wife, Nancy, reside in New Braunfels, Texas, right outside of San Antonio. At this point, before General Brady speaks, I would like for those who were dusted off or evacuated by dust-off aircraft in Vietnam, would you please stand and let's thank General Brady. And lastly, anyone who was a crew member on a dust-off, would you please stand? Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, there are thousands of soldiers, veterans of that terrible war, alive today, some of whom are with us because of the bravery, courage, and skill of Army dust-off crews. Thank you, General Brady. General Brady, the floor is yours, sir. Thank you again for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. By the way, there would be no dust-off if it wasn't for Charles Kelly, who was from Georgia. And I forget exactly what town he's from, but he was a Georgian, an Irish Georgian, the best kind. And I appreciate the introduction. I love to hear all these nice things about myself, hear what a fine fellow I am. I wish my wife could be here to hear what a fine fellow I am. More than that, I wish my wife's mother could be here to hear what And I was happy to see that they recognized the wives. You know, I think Adam's rib was the greatest investment in mankind's history, and the military wife. My wife is not here, but she always insisted that I pay homage to the military wife. Now, it wasn't always peaches and cream, as you know. We were gone a lot. And she used to get after me for being gone. And I'd say, get over it, for God's sakes. Get a hobby. Do something with yourself. So I came home from a trip one time, and I said, dear, did you get it? Yes, I got a hobby. What are you doing? I'm raising chickens. She's a city girl. I'm a country boy. So she says, all of a sudden, there's her chickens. 2 roosters and 1 hen. I says, dear, I think you missed the point. She says, no, you missed the point. One of those roosters travels a lot. And I guess I couldn't come in front of a crowd like this without telling a war story. You know, they ask us why we did what we did, the dust-off people and everything, and I was going to point out one particular Special Forces trooper here and say he was why we did, but he didn't dress up. He looks like a damn tramp. Jack, stand up and wave at him. Yeah. Great troop, but he was a Special Forces medic, saw some horrible stuff, or a Special Forces guy, saw some horrible stuff over there. So y'all know the difference between a war story and a fairy tale. I know a lot of you do. Fairy tale begins once upon a time. A war story begins with this is no shit. So Trump said I could use that word. So our job was to go in and pick up the wounded, oftentimes during the battle. And, you know, we learned by trial and error, and after a while, you would analyze the terrain, the friendly location, the enemy location, the weather, the whatever, and a highway would just spring out of the sky and take you right down to the ground. And so one day I'm flying with this big warrant officer, and we're going in to pick up some Marines. As was the case with the Marines, as usual, there's a lot of confusion down there. We got some Marines here. I don't want you to think I'm saying anything disparaging about Marines, but for you Marines, disparaging is bad. So he made a beautiful approach down a riverbed, up over the trees, turn your tail into the fire, and you sat down. A lot of shooting, a lot of screaming, a lot of confusion, as always. And if you've ever been in a deal like that, you understand what it means to pucker. And pucker is when the cheeks from the lower part of your body slowly begin to envelop your ears. And so we're sitting there puckered, and you also try and make yourself as small as you can. And I look at my buddy, get him on, let's get out of here. And he's not only puckered and shrunk, but his head's going like this, all over the cockpit. And back to the patients, get him on, get back to my buddy, and there he is, his head's all over the place, and I couldn't help myself. I just broke down and laughed out loud. He didn't miss a stroke. He said, laugh, you son of a bitch, but it's harder to hit a moving target. By the way, that's a true story. So much for the serious part of this. You know, America has no kings or queens, we have no dukes or duchesses, but we do have a nobility. And America's nobility is called simply veterans. Their titles range from private to sergeant to general or simply GI. The premier titles are KIA, WIA, and POW. Unlike other nobilities, these titles were not inherited. They were earned through their blood, sweat, and tears, which is the holy trinity that secures our freedom. Our nobility, America's nobility, has been the vault for the values of this nation. They didn't take an oath to defend a person, a party, a king, or a dictator. They took an oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States, which is a set of values. And so that's what veterans would like for us to honor. Not just them. Some of us have been honored to death. But the values for which they gave so much of body and soul, values such as courage, sacrifice, and patriotism. Alexander Solzhenitsyn warned about the danger of a nation amputating its memory, of silent generations growing old and dying without ever talking about themselves either to each other or to their descendants. And that is why what is most important, indeed vital, is that the youth of today see that we remember, that we are grateful, that service and sacrifice and courage are noble things. Today we remember the noble veteran warrior of Vietnam and what they did. And what they did was incredible. As we celebrate the 50th anniversary of Vietnam and Tet recently, it's a good time to look on that great warrior and set the record straight for future generations, especially for our young people, to ensure that they are not misinformed by the likes of Burns and Novick and that recent documentary. They need to know about the sacrifices of their parents, their grandparents, and relatives who served in Vietnam. And I wonder if there's ever a war where after 50 years, we're still saying, welcome home. I dare say the rest of our warriors were welcome home when they came home. The reason, of course, is that when the Vietnam vet came home, he was treated like a war criminal, and we lost. Not something that Americans are wild about. Yet that soldier was never defeated on any battlefield in Vietnam. Our defeat was at the hands of the elite in the courtrooms, the classrooms, the cloakrooms, and the newsrooms. Cowardly, media-phobic politicians, irresponsible, dishonest media, and other cowards and spoiled brats and professors from Berkeley to Harvard. I wish I could think better words to describe that. A word on the media, I've often called them the axis of America's axis of evil. The others, of course, are the courtrooms, the classrooms, and the cloakrooms. So in deference to the snowflakes and evil deniers, when I use evil, I'm talking about acts of person, not the person. Only God can determine if a person is evil. God's laws are a good guide, by the way, to evil acts. And for the media, for example, the 8th commandment, which says, thou shalt not bear false witness against the neighbor, they thrive on that. False witness lies no more evident than what they did to the Vietnam veteran. Nothing is more important in a democratic republic than the military and the media. One keeps us secure and the other keeps us free. We can't survive without a military strong and an honest media. The military is recovering and is doing its job. The media does not tell us the truth about ourselves, essential to our freedoms. Hosea the prophet warned about a people destroyed for lack of knowledge. When we attack the media, we are not attacking freedom of the press, we're attacking the honesty of an unquestionably dishonest press. Examples of dishonesty in the media are legion. They create a narrative, often a lie, and attach a trigger to it. For example, Vietnam veteran, baby killers, etc. The media creates a lack of knowledge of truth which could destroy us. They did that with Tet, which triggers defeat, and it's a lie. Now, we recently found a remarkable, and I hope we can get this to you folks, tape of what Uncle Walter Cronkite said right after Tet. Here's what he said. First, right after Tet, first and simplest, the Viet Cong suffered a military defeat. Its mission proved suicidal. If they had intended to stay in the cities as a negotiating point, they failed at that. The Vietnamese army reacted better than even the most ardent supporters had anticipated. There were no defections from its ranks. The Viet Cong apparently had expected that. And the people did not rise up to support the Viet Cong as they were also believed to have expected. Those are Walter Cronkite's exact words. He later came back to America in his famous broadcast, said just the opposite. And he was instrumental in our defeat. President Johnson, as you all know, said if he's lost Cronkite, he's lost Middle America, and that was the beginning of the end of the Vietnam War. So if you read my book, you'll know that Tet was one of the greatest military defeats in history. Here's what General Giap said. He was the supreme commander. He beat the French, and then he beat us. One of the great generals in history. He said, what we don't understand is why you Americans stopped the bombing of Hanoi. You had us on the ropes. If you had pressed just a little harder, a day or two, we were ready to surrender. It was the same at the Battle of Tet. You defeated us, and we knew it. And we thought you knew it. But we were elated to notice your media was helping us. They were causing more disruption in America than we could on the battlefield. We were ready to surrender. You had won. End of the quote. Some time ago, some media people were working on a video while Giap and Westmoreland were still alive to put Giap on film admitting what a great defeat Tet was for his side. And General Westmoreland asked me to go to Vietnam and talk to General Giap about this video, which would finally tell the American people the truth about Tet. And I went over there and I talked to Giap, and it was at the time when we never got the video done, but Giap was very open about the fact that their side had been defeated in Tet. Living with the scars of war is difficult, for some unbearable, but all veterans suffer. The Vietnam veterans suffered physically as much, perhaps more than any veteran of the past century. But no veteran has suffered the mental agony of that veteran. The thing that makes Vietnam so intolerable is what the elite tried to do to dishonor the source of those scars, to intensify the pain of the Vietnam veteran, and destroy their unselfish and honorable legacy. They opened a gash in the psyche, and then they rubbed salt in it. And as bad, the atrocities committed by the communists on the friends we abandoned, hundreds of thousands of people after we left. Vietnam matches in unselfishness anything we ever did. There was really nothing in it for us in a material sense. We were simply trying to help a helpless people be free from the scourges of communism. He contributed so much, the GI did, in his usual generous way, to the welfare, the health, the education of those wonderful people, especially the young. The Vietnam veteran, fixed as he fought, he cured and educated and built in the middle of the battle. Hospitals, orphanages, he vaccinated thousands, adopted the children, educated them. We cared for and we cared about those people. No barrier, no political system will erase what the Vietnam veteran gave to those people. In fact, it may be the only war we ever fought, or perhaps that was ever fought, in which the American soldier added to their heroism a humanitarianism unmatched in the annals of warfare. And he did it during the heat of the battle. Humanitarianism was our great victory in Vietnam. And it's still there in the psyche of the people of Vietnam, in their hearts and souls, as in many people all over the world who have been touched by the American GI. Cannot help but have a positive influence in the future. I've been back there 3 times, and I'm amazed at the way I was treated. You know, the kids in the street, the little flower girls and the kids, and you get them around and start to talk to them. Where in the world would they like to go more than anywhere else? America. What city in America? Las Vegas. Where in the hell they got that, I don't know. I'm dealing with this one little kid talking, what's your favorite American president? Benjamin Franklin. No, no, no. Come on, young man. Benjamin Franklin was never an American president. He says, yes, he was. He reaches in his pocket and pulls out a $100 bill right on the street. And I said, where in the hell did you get that? And here I'm giving the guy money. So if we look at beyond the media narrative, we see the quality of this veteran, the intensity of the fight, and the suffering of that soldier from Vietnam. If you look at the facts, undefeated in combat, an average infantryman in the Pacific World War II saw about 40 days of combat in 4 years. His counterpart in Vietnam saw 240 days of combat in 1 year. Amputations or crippling wounds to the lower extremities were 300% higher than in World War II, 70% higher than Korea. Multiple amputations occurred at the rate of 18.4% as opposed to 6% in World War II. Now, above the magnificent grunts, the aviation accomplishments in Vietnam were unprecedented. In World War II, aircraft losses were 16%. In Vietnam, we lost 43%. My unit lost like 116% of our aircraft shot up every month. I read that in World War II, some pilots completed tours after 25 missions at an average of 4 hours per mission, or a total of 100 hours. In Vietnam, 100 hours was an average month for many, and 25 missions an average week. We see horrifying suicide rates among today's warriors, just really hard to understand. Yet the Vietnam veteran who saw as much or more combat than any warrior ever, after living through the immediate calumny of his service and sacrifice, had a lower suicide rate than his civilian counterpart. Initially it was high, but later much lower. He not only distinguished himself in combat, he came back home and became model citizens. They were the best educated force our nation ever sent into combat. 79% had a high school education or better. His unemployment rate, personal income, drug use, and incarceration rate are more positive than the same not veteran cohort. And as a tribute to their patriotism, despite the shoddy treatment, 90% of the Vietnam veteran is glad that he served. And by the way, so is the vast majority of the Americans. If you look at Desert Shield, Desert Storm, probably one of the most remarkable victories, along with Tet, in our history. Every commander, every leader in that war was a Vietnam veteran. It was our vets in Vietnam who slowed the onslaught of communism to this day, and that's what Westy used to always say. And communism in Vietnam is dead. They just don't know what to do with the corpse. There's an inscription on a wall in a veteran cemetery that says, "They sacrificed their youth that liberty might grow old." There's no one anywhere that better applies to than the veterans of Vietnam. Humanitarianism and a roadblock to communism were our great victories in Vietnam. The good news, I think, is we were ashamed, America is ashamed of what we did to the Vietnam veteran, and it has a lot to do with the way we treat today's warriors. These guys are treated really well, thank God. Respect, reverence, every American warrior deserves that, at least by our people, the vast majority of whom, as I said, respect the Vietnam veteran, but not all. I once had a prominent politician turn his back on me in the middle of a conversation because I was a Vietnam veteran in uniform and there was a camera directed at us. That neglect by Congress continues to this day. In May of 2015, I noticed an article in one of our military magazines which listed the individual and unit groups who had been awarded the Congressional Gold Medal. I was amazed to find that no unit or group from Vietnam had been awarded this honor. Most were from World War II, one or two from Korea. Several aviation units were honored, Tuskegee Airmen, Women's Air Force, American Fighter Aces from all wars. Speaking of fighter, have we got any fixed-wing fighter aces, weenies in here tonight? I hope not. I was playing golf with one time. Very famous fighter pilot, an ace, much celebrated for having flown 100 combat missions. Between us, Mike Novosel and I had over 5,000 combat missions. Not unusual for a pilot, dust-off pilot, or any chopper pilot in Vietnam. Needless to say, when the ace was hovering over a putter, we brought that to his attention. When I compared the considerable accomplishments of the aviation crew people on dust-off, it's clear to me that the dust-off crewman should be a no-brainer for the Congressional Gold Medal. It's been singled out by every Supreme Commander in Vietnam for special recognition. They led the humanitarian effort, set battlefield survival rates unparalleled in history. 500,000 combat missions, 900,000 rescues, men, women, children, enemy as well as friendly. Although 1 in 10 GI in Vietnam was wounded, less than 1% died, thanks to dust-off and the incredible medical thing we had there. In my unit, just to give you an idea of the workload of the dust-off units, 40 men in the detachment, 6 aircraft, 3 flyable at any one time. As I said, 116% shot up. Plus we had a bunch of young warrant officers, teenage warrant officers, give me a break. They would fly down the tube of a .50 caliber, but they couldn't miss a tree, and they always landed on stumps. So in addition to the enemy, we had that issue. But with just 3 flyable aircraft, those guys in a 10-month period evacuated over 21,000 patients in just 10 months. Suffered 26 Purple Hearts out of the 40 men, and the awards went on and on and on. An example of an average dust-off unit in Vietnam. And the other helicopter pilots, the gunship pilots, the slick ship pilots flew every bit as much and in every bit as dangerous of situations. We were in the midst of celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Vietnam War, and what could be more fitting? Once the Congressional Gold Medal was awarded to dust-off, the door would be open for many other deserving units from Vietnam. With the support of Senator John Cornyn, he came to Texas, opened this project. Every major American veterans organization, they introduced bills in the House and the Senate. Most representatives revered the great warriors who served there, but after a year and a half, needing 281 co-sponsors in the House, 66 in the Senate, we got 6 co-sponsors in the House and 9 in the Senate. Yet they still had time and got the votes for a Congressional Gold Medal for the Filipino veterans of World War II. Certainly deserving, but certainly no more deserving than the dust-off crews. It's in this Congress, introduced, Hope you guys will support it. We need to open the door to the great units and people who fought in Vietnam. Had to get that off my back. In some faiths, there's a doctrine on grace, and it teaches us that there's a treasure chest and it's filled with grace. And it was filled by the sacrifices of Jesus and the saints, and it's available to all of us as we struggle to do what's right. We can all draw from that chest of grace through no particular merits of our own, but simply because of God's love for us. Our freedom is like grace, a treasure chest. It was filled by the sacrifices of our great heroes and patriots. We all draw from the chest of freedom, often through no particular merits of our own, but simply because of their love for us. The chest of grace is inexhaustible because it comes from God. Not so the chest of freedom. It must continuously be replenished by our sacrifices, and that's why it's vital that we remember today and revere the sacrifices of those who went before us. Now, speaking of chests, C.S. Lewis, in his condemnation of moral relativism and a valueless society, he wrote about men without chests. For him, the chest symbolized the spiritual element, the value center of a person. It was the indispensable connection between the head, the intellectual, mental element, and the belly, which was the visceral, emotional, passionate part of our nation. Balance comes when the head rules the belly through the chest. Danger comes from a people without a chest. From intellectuals without values, human animals governed by passion and instinct alone. Today, many fear America is in danger of becoming a nation without a chest. What to do? The answer is simple. We must grow patriots, those who support and defend, not say, I love America, give me a break. A patriot is one who will support and defend America. I heard a preacher say once that if love is to survive, it must be expressed. We know that's true. Same is true of patriotism. It must be expressed, and we do that by doing patriotic things, honoring patriots as we do here today. Not just veterans, but the great patriots in our society, teachers, coaches, police, firemen, and most especially our parents. But we must never forget that the highest form of patriotism is service to our children. After about 15 years of character development program in the Medal of Honor Society, going to schools to teach them about vignettes from Medal of Honor people on courage, sacrifice, and patriotism, most of us have come to the conclusion that in order for our society to survive, a democratic society, we must grow patriots. It's just that simple. And it's not taught in very many schools. And to give you an idea what a patriot is, I always tell the story of Webster Anderson. He was a patriot with a chest, big, powerful black soldier on a mountaintop in Vietnam in the middle of a tropical storm. In the initial attack, the communists pretty much took off both his legs. Still, he kept fighting. The next attack, they threw a hand grenade into his position. He caught the hand grenade, and when he was throwing it clear of his men, it pretty much took off his arm. I flew in that night and picked up what was left of Webster and his wounded and took him to the hospital. Amazingly, the hospital was able to save his life, but they couldn't save his 2 legs and 1 arm. Webster was awarded the Medal of Honor for that action. It's probably one of 2 or 3 in history where one Medal of Honor recipient was involved in combat with another one. But he and I became very close. He thought I saved his life. The doctor saved his life. We would talk to kids with our various programs. And we're at the artillery school. He was an artilleryman talking to a group of kids. He was more plastic than he was flesh, but he insisted on standing up. So we would prop him up in the wall. He had a cane where 1 arm was. And we talked to the kids and they asked him a question. And they said, Mr. Anderson, knowing what you know now, that it would cost you 2 legs and an arm, would you do it again? And old Webster he holds up his good arm and he says, kid, I only got 1 arm left, but my country can have it anytime they want. Now those kids, for the first time maybe, saw a true patriot, and I'm sure they never forgot that great black soldier, as I said, more plastic than flesh, teaching them what patriotism was. So we need to grow children with chests who are patriots. Our veterans don't believe they did America a favor by their service. They believe God did them a favor by allowing us to be born in this great country. They believe that their lives have meaning only if lived to benefit the next generation. The World War II guy was my hero. The Vietnam vet is my brother and sister. And I'm grateful to be here today with so many brothers and sisters from Vietnam and to remember friends on that Great Wall in D.C. I was with many of them. When they took their last helicopter ride. God bless us. Happy to be with you. We're going to have some question and answers.
Before General Brady takes some questions from the group, I'd like to present on behalf of the Atlanta Vietnam Veterans Business Association our necktie, coin, and campaign ribbon that we all wear proudly.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Where's my aide? Kenny, come up here and hold this. Okay, we got time for questions. Maybe I got time for another war story, you think? You know, being a veteran is not, it's not all it's cracked up to be. All you old veterans out there, you remember that stuff they put in our food to keep us from chasing the girls? It's starting to work. I can't leave it. The other thing that I find as I talk to all these, except for that skinny guy there, all these, you know, the pot-belly guy, and difficult to stay in shape. After you retire all those days, I remember how nice it was at the Presidio in San Francisco. The aide would knock on my door in the morning. I'd come out, we'd run down, cross the Golden Gate Bridge. It was just beautiful. Now nobody knocks on my door. But one time we're running by the tennis courts and there's a tennis ball in the street. And of course we police up on our post camps and stations, we keep them clean, so I picked up the tennis ball and I slipped it down the fronts of my shorts and I kept running. About that time, some young trooper, female trooper, comes and says, General, can I run with you? And I says, yes, of course, if you hold the pace down. I see her looking at my crotch. And I said, don't worry. I said, that's just a tennis ball. She says, General, don't feel bad. I had a tennis elbow once and it went away. What are your questions? You guys got any questions? Where? Over here? Oh, here. Go ahead.
I've read a number of citations. I've met a number of recipients. And one of the threads that, there's several threads that run through your lives and careers is persistence. Your career in Vietnam flying helicopters was going back and going back and going back and going back. The guy in Afghanistan, going back, going back, going back. Where'd you learn that?
If you read my book, you'll find out there's some things that they say that once a guy, his first time into combat, he's eager and ready, but to get him to go back is a trick. And so, you know, the mission that we had was probably the greatest mission that you know, if you died doing what we were doing, rescuing the American soldier, what better way to die? I mean, we never thought about it. We always went after the patient just like it was one of ours. That's what made this mission so great, because we were saving lives, and there's nothing, you know, you talk about a walk-off home run or a 40-foot putt to win or lobster steak. I won't mention the other one, but the great thrills in life, there's not any that matches the thrill of saving a human life. Doctors do it all the time. We did it in Vietnam, and we got very good at it. We were very, very difficult to kill. After a while, it took us a while to learn, but if you read my book, and I expect you guys to come and buy my book, we get done here. And I'm also got my coin. Medal of Honor guys have their own personal coin. The money goes to good causes, so don't worry about it. Now, the women love this coin because it's got my picture on it. And so if any woman comes up and looks at this picture and said, when I was a captain, and doesn't say, General Brady, you haven't changed in 50 years, she's in trouble. So that's the deal with the women. But we just had the greatest mission that a person could ever ask for. And in my book, and I explained to you how the good Lord showed me the way to make rescues that for me otherwise would have been impossible. Fear, emotion, courage, a decision. And so we had to make a decision. We had to overcome the fear thing and make a decision. And by the way, I never minded going back in. Very often, the first guy in gets shot up, or if it's you, you get shot up. But the VC and the communists very often would hug the belly, or they would get out of there because they knew the artillery was coming. So what do they say? The second mouse gets the cheese. So the second time in was probably safer than the first time in. So that's going back and back was not an issue. The issue was, how in the hell are we going to get all those guys out? That was the issue.
Next.
I know you were here once before, maybe 2 years ago, with a group of Medal of Honor winners. Are you and Crandall still have decided who's the best helicopter pilot?
Yes. He's a pretender. You wouldn't believe this guy. You guys probably heard of Bruce Crandall. We were soldiers once and young. The hero of that, the guy that played his part so damn much better looking than him, it's not even funny. And the first time I meet this guy, we're at something, and I see this guy hovering behind me. He was kind of a late comer to the Medal of Honor Society. Here's this guy hovering, and I said, I don't like people standing behind me. So I turn around and says, who the hell are you? And he says, I am Bruce Crandall, Snake 6. You are now the second best helicopter pilot that ever lived. So that's how we met. And we've been going at it ever since. But he is a pretender to the throne, no question. Yes, sir.
Sir, would you explain the conditions that you encountered and the weather when you went up the mountain to rescue all those folks?
Okay, I described this in my book, but here was the issue. My first tour, we got a lot of pilots here, right? My first issue, we flew the Delta. The Delta was one great landing area, forced landing area. You lose an engine in the Delta, day or night, you're probably going to live. Second tour, we're in the mountains. where Webster was. In the mountains, weather, serious weather, and in the morning you had the low valley fog, which was like 500 feet of a snowbank. In the afternoon, on the top of the mountains where they had the outpost, the weather would come down. And I got every one of my pilots graduated from flight school on the same day, 2 months before we got to Vietnam. They all thought they were hand-picked to fly dust off. All their names started with an S. Somebody just pulled them out of and gave them to me. And so I'm praying like crazy every day because I know they're going to push themselves, weather, night, and we're going to kill a bunch of them. At that time, we were killing more people, dust-off pilots at night and weather than the enemy was killing. So I get a call one afternoon, and some young troop is snake bit, and he's on the top of an outpost. And as I got out to the area, the weather was down about 1,500 feet from the top of the outpost. And so I look at it and I thought, what the hell, how do I do this? So I start up into it, and I knew that if I got disoriented, I could fall off into the valley and I would be VFR again, visual. I went around again and got all screwed up, didn't know if I was right side up or not, broke off, came back around. I'm going, the crew's getting nervous. And the guy on top of the mountain is screaming at me, dust off, dust off. He's going into convulsion. Please, hurry, hurry. So I told the crew, guys, we got one more shot. So the last shot, I come around, I go up that sucker, and I always flew with my window open. And the right side, why? Pilots, more power, better instruments. And the wind blew me sidewards, totally disoriented. Look out the window, I was looking for a hole in the jungle, knowing that we were going to the ground, hoping that we'd come down right side up. And guess what? We're in the thick of that stuff. I can see the rotor tip and I can see the top of the trees. 30 feet out, I got 2 reference points. I know I'm right side up. So I turned that sucker sidewards, right up the area, rotor blade, trees, into the area, and got the guy with the snake bite, and I think he lived. That took care of the afternoon fog and the low valley fog. Never again were we stopped. I now knew how to do that. That wind was the breath of God. And by the way, that's probably why I got the medal. Because we were picking up guys in fog at the base of a fire base, and when we came out of the fog, the guys are standing on the mountaintop, and they'd been trying all morning. I wasn't on duty that day, trying to get them out. And of course, we knew how to do it. And so we got them out, and a bunch of people saw it, and that's how we got the medal, pretty much. We had other missions too.
Sir,
Yes, sir.
General, I don't have a question for you, just a statement. Your presentation is the best I've ever heard. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Yes, sir.
As a follow-on to what Pete just said, would you be amenable to providing your words today via email to the
You bet.
membership?
I'll email it to Craig or whoever. I got to take out all the cuss words. They told me I'm going to be on film, so I had to smooth it out a little bit. How we doing?
I think we have time for one more.
Yes, ma'am.
Want to?
Come up here, young lady. I want to see you. Over here, over here.
Sir, I was curious how you would feel the best way to teach and to lead the generations coming up, as well as, I would say, my peers, to take care of the veterans that have come before us, as well as military and civilian lives.
Go online to our character development program for the Medal of Honor Society. I give a lecture on courage, patriotism, and sacrifice, just simply brilliant. Do you believe that?
A little bit.
And it's some great stuff, some great material, because you have some great Medal of Honor guys who tell their story, and they tie it into the courage is the key to success in life. The foundation of courage is faith. Sacrifice is the key to happiness in life, along with gratitude. Patriotism is Webster Anderson. So it's that kind of stuff that's in there that we take to the schools across America. Now, your lucky thing, I'm going to give you a coin. All right, now what's your job? Give me a break.
What do you mean?
Look at my picture. All right, what do you say? What do you say? General Brady, you haven't changed in 50 years. Let me hear it.
I feel like you have changed just a little bit.
God bless you.
Thank you very much, sir.